That is Toby Mack on Rhema with the Promised Land. It is just coming up on 10:20. For most of us, especially in an election year, we are going to be asking the question, okay, so how does this affect me? How do these policies affect my personal well-being and those that I love and care about? And most often, we measure that economically. Am I going to get better? Am I going to be financially better off as a result of this? Is inflation going to come down? Is my mortgage rates going to come down? Is my tax rate going to come down? These are all sorts of policies that win votes. But a question is being asked as to whether or not actually law and order is the new cost of living. Are we more concerned about whether or not the neighbourhoods that we live in are safe? This particularly, of course, after the gunman loose in the Auckland CBD last week, and of course, loss of life. There's still people in hospital as a result of this. Is this going to be the sort of policy that could win or lose an election? Joining me on the program now from the Maxim Institute, Marcus Roberts. Marcus, kia ora. Good morning. Thanks for your time.
Kia ora, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Is it in that sort of category? Are we saying that actually the crime and punishment is the new cost of living when it comes to political policies? What's your thoughts?
No, so I don't think I don't think it will replace cost of living as the number one priority. But what we've seen in the series of polls that Ipsos runs, where they ask people, what's your top 5 issues or top 10 issues, and then they rank them, and you can see how they change over time, is since the middle of last year, crime has steadily climbed up to be a very clear second priority for people. So cost of living, about 60% of people say this is a priority for them. Crime is now at about 40% of people. And you compare it to last year, I think it was about 10%. So it really has increased. And at the same time, cost of living is coming down. I don't think they'll ever cross over.
Yep.
If we have a few more incidents like last week, then maybe they will. But the point is, I think that it's becoming much more visible, not only in our mainstream media, but I think also now we're seeing all sides of the political spectrum having to deal with it. We've had Labour last week, the government, say this is our new suite of policies to do with law and order, whereas before there'd been a bit of a, this is not so bad as maybe the media is making out.
And honestly, it isn't so bad, although the rate of concern has gone up. The rate of criminality, the crime rate, even violent crime, hasn't gone up as the same rate as our concern, perhaps.
Yeah, there's a very interesting piece I was just reading this morning in the Post. You can get it online if you're not down in Wellington, where David Farrer, who does Kiwi Blog and Courier polling, looked at the numbers of violent offences as recorded by the police since Labour came to power in 2017. And violent offences have gone up 44% as reported. And yet at the same time, prosecutions for violent offending has gone down, convictions have gone down, and the number of people put in prison for violent offending has fallen 36%. So there is actually, I think there's a perception that crime is increasing. And I don't know overall crime rates, but certainly according to those numbers, violent crime is increasing quite significantly, even if we adjust for population.
And, those are interesting statistics, but I mean, you ask the question, is the person guilty when the judge says guilty, or are they guilty when they commit the crime? And there's a world of difference between two sets of statistics there. It does seem quite unusual, though, for Labour to be leading the charge in tough on crime, particularly when over the last, a couple of political cycles, they've been talking about reducing the rate of incarceration and other perhaps less punitive strategies to tackle crime and punishment in New Zealand. Are they caving to the pressure of national accusing them of being soft on crime? Are they? Is it a last gasp to take the wind out of national sails in the election? What's your thoughts?
I think that's exactly how you have to read it, because why else would they be doing it 3 months out from an election? You know, as you said quite rightly just there, Andrew, they've changed from very much we've got too many people in prison, we need to reduce them. That was a clear stated aim back in 2017, and it's one of the few areas in which one of their stated aims have been met or are going to be met in terms of the reduction in prison numbers. And then suddenly you had last week, actually, we're going to increase the number of offences. So there's a new offence for ram raiding. We're going to build new youth justice facilities, although we don't know how much they cost or what they're going to do or when they'll be completed. And we are going to make it easier for younger offenders to be brought to the youth court rather than dealt with by other sort of family meetings. So that says to me that this is a government that was concerned that they were very vulnerable on law and order.
Yeah.
That you had National Enact making the running on tough on crime, and obviously Labor were concerned that that was resonating with voters, fairly or unfairly, in terms of the crime rate. Clearly, voters are concerned, and if you're a government, what voters are concerned about, you become concerned about.
Because even if you hold the higher moral ground in terms of your policies, if you're not the government, then you're in opposition. So exactly in that regard.
You can't do much from opposition.
In terms of the launch of this policy, it all did seem a little bit scrambled. Now, of course, this was all before the delicious irony of the Justice Minister being arrested over the weekend, but it didn't seem to be a coherent or even thought-through strategy in the way it was delivered. It did look a little bit like a scramble as it was delivered by the government last week.
It did, and that adds to the idea that this is not this is more of a conversion very, very quickly turnaround, that you haven't thought about it, you're reacting to pressure, you're not actually really convinced that you need to get tough on crime or that you want to get tough on crime. Ironically, of course, of the three announcements last week, the one that went the best was the one with Kitty Allen.
Yeah.
And so now, of course, that's she's departed from the ministerial portfolios. But the other two were just, I mean, the one on the two new youth justice centres was a debacle. I think one of the commentators said it was the worst government announcement he's ever sat through.
And we've got some pretty high standards in terms of saying worst, right?
Yeah, that's right.
There's also been some comments.
That sounds cynical, Andrew.
Well, from me, certainly not. There also have been some comments, though, for those who are, I suppose, in the restorative justice area, people such as Just Speak and other similar organisations accusing the government of selling out. Now, they've been big fans of the government policy to reduce incarceration rates.
Yes.
Do you think they've got a point? Have the government, sold their birthright or perhaps compromised the ideology to make sure they win this election?
Yeah, I think that's always the concern. When you have the other side of the political aisle making the running on an issue, and then you try and catch up or try and tack the same way, you run the risk of annoying your base who don't agree with you and never convincing anyone that you'll be as good on that issue as the originals. Why would I go with a tough on crime Labor, for example, when ACT and National are promising me more tough on crime and they did it first and they seem to actually be convinced by it? So you run the danger of convincing no one and, in fact, bleeding support both ways. So, yes, I think that is a concern. But obviously Labor did the calculations and said we have to be seen to be doing something. To do nothing would be worse, even if we lose the support of some of our supporters who think that tough on crime just doesn't work.
It did seem like some of the calculations were done on the back of a napkin on the way to the press conference. But yes, I suppose wait and see. This policy has just landed. The waters are going to get a bit muddied with what has happened with Kitty Allen. But we'll wait and see whether or not this moves the dial at all in terms of traction in the polls. Of course, as we get closer to the election, these polls are going to keep coming closer and closer together, right?
I think that's right. We start to get them, sort of fortnightly, I think, from the big news, the One News and TV3, and then you've got the other ones being run by Courier and Roy Morgan. So yeah, we're going to get them all because that's a great story for political journalists. But it will be interesting to see how whether this tight race, which seems to be one or two seats in it between the left and right, continue. I mean, I've heard some commentary this morning in the wake of the Kitty Allen resignation that they think this will just blow out. I think Peter Dunn said he thinks it will just widen because it just adds to this idea. But who knows? We've got 3 months.
Yeah.
As we've seen over the last week, a week is a long time in politics. 3 months is an eternity.
Yeah, and a lot can happen during that time. Hey, appreciate your commentary and your insight. The article that we were discussing is available at the Maxim website, maxim.org.nz. Marcus, kia ora, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Have a great day.